Welcome to Inside the Vault, Enterprise Bank's podcast series where we talk about items of interest to the small business community. In today's episode, which will be the first of a two-part series on Velum fermentation. Velum is a relatively new entrant into the craft beer scene here in Pittsburgh. And in part one, we're going to talk to the principals of Velum fermentation about how they got into the brewing business and how they ended up opening a brewery here in the south side of Pittsburgh. With me today are Nate McLaughlin and Jenna McLaughlin.
Hey.
From Velum. Welcome, guys. How are you?
Thanks for having us. Yeah. This is cool.
So before we start talking about, Velum and the project that you guys, or the business that you guys have recently started, give us a little background on kind of who you are, where you came from, and then we can kind of evolve that into, why you guys are in the craft beer scene in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually grew up in Franklin, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour and a half north of Pittsburgh, up in Venango County. So I grew up there, and then I went to college in Scranton. So over by, everyone kind of knows Scranton, right? It's the home of the office, and
right.
Yeah. So that's actually where that's where all my extended family are from, like my grandparents, my aunts and uncles. My parents actually grew up in Scranton, so so that's where I'm from. And then, after college, I was kind of dinking around trying to see if I wanted to stay in academia. What industry do I want to be in? Do I want to use my degree, which is something I decided not to do.
What's your degree in?
In neuroscience.
Oh,
yeah. So I was doing learning and memory research at one of the med schools in Scranton. Okay. Well, the med school in Scranton. Actually, I don't know if it still exists. I know they had just started it. So, I was doing learning and memory research there, and just seeing if I wanted to actually continue and do a master's and then maybe a PhD in neuroscience. And I decided against it. I decided that academia was it was too much reading and too much writing for me. I'm more of the physical,
hands-on guy.
Hands-on guy.
Got it.
Which is good for the brewing industry because it's actually for a while it's good in the brewing industry until you start a brewery, and then it's reading and paperwork. So I'm kind of
Full circle.
but it's it's different. But yeah, so I did that, and then for about a year and a half, and then I decided me and my buddies, I was homebrewing, which is a lot of the stories of how you start deciding to be a brewer. You're a home brewer, and that's almost always how it started. So I was homebrewing and making absolutely terrible beer because that's what not all homebrewers, but people that started I was 5 batches in. You can't make good beer 5 batches in. These guys that are doing home brewing, for the competitions and stuff, they make tremendous beer, and they have all this flexibility to do all these interesting, awesome ingredients, which a lot of the bigger brewers can't do. I'm digressing though. Yeah. Anyway, back into it. Scranton, I decided to be a brewer, and so I applied to beer school out in UC Davis. I already had a bachelor's, so I didn't want to do the 4-year program they have. I just went into their master brewers program, which is kind of a condensed 6-month. This is how you can use all the science you learned in your bachelor's towards brewing.
Got it.
It's 8 hours a day for 6 months, and in the middle of that, there's a hands-on internship at an actual brewery. I did that at Deschutes.
Well-known name in the craft beer industry.
Lucky enough to get in at Deschutes, and the team there is killer. They've always been, and they still are, just amazing humans. And then after my class was done, they offered me a summer internship, which turned into a job. That was my first job in the industry. So started there, Bend, Oregon, beautiful. I would have stayed there if I was in a different spot in my life. It's absolutely gorgeous. But it's tough. It's tough to be there if you don't make a lot of money, which brewers, especially early in the industry, you don't make a lot of money, and if you're single in Bend, it sucks. So, I mean, just, being honest.
Yeah,
like,
one
it's
of the
just
mecca
like,
areas of the U.S.
oh
in
my
terms
God,
of
yeah.
brewing.
For brewing and for outdoor stuff. And it's like absolutely gorgeous. And I would love to visit again or even end up there if I would feel lucky ending up there if I was to retire there. So, yeah, that was my first spot. Stayed there for a couple of years until I've been in the industry since basically since then. So 2011, 2012. I've just kind of used my experience in my career to act as my education.
Got it.
Because I joined the industry knowing I wanted to start a brewery. I didn't know where, I didn't know when, but I figured I would figure that out on the way.
Well, we're going to find out the where and when here in a few minutes.
Right. Yeah.
So, what other breweries did you spend time at?
Yeah. So after Deschutes, then I decided I wanted to get a little closer to family. I moved back over to Philly. I worked at Victory for about 2.5 years again. I stayed about 2.5 years at every brewery.
Love Brawler. Love the Brawler.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I learned a lot about making lagers and a lot of stuff, like a lot of interesting things at Victory. Helped them with their barrel program a little bit. I got to see their Parksburg facility get built. I was just like subordinate to Matt Couch there, which he's a stellar human and also like a brewing genius. So he was kind of like taking lead on the Parksburg facility, and me and another brewer were, just kind of there learning, helping brew some of the first batches on the system, which was really cool to see. Huge, 250 barrel brew house.
Wow.
2 kettles. It can do decoctions. It can do all this stuff. It's like really fancy. So, and huge. So really, really cool to see that. Obviously, after that, I decided, maybe I should start working for smaller breweries because I'm not going to start a Parksburg facility right off the bat. So then after that, I went back over, and this is where I met Jenna. I moved back over to Bellingham, Washington, which is another mecca of beer.
Okay.
And beautiful space. It's close to the mountains, close to the sea, close to the ocean or the Puget Sound.
Right.
And I worked for Colshan Brewing Company there. Worked under their head brewer and helped them do their expansion to like a 30 barrel production facility.
So you've kind of seen things through the whole range of production.
Yeah. I mean, that was the idea, right?
Yeah.
So I started big. I kind of went backwards, right? I started big and went small rather than the other way around, which is how a lot of people do it. But
right.
I that's just kind of like, I probably would have done that way, small to big, if I hadn't got the Deschutes thing. And then Deschutes got my foot in the door for big production craft breweries, because there was a need for that at the time. So kind of filled that need while doing as many projects as I could, usually like on my own time, because, that's how you get a lot of experience, by doing a lot of stuff for free. But it's education. Right. So
neat.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Jenna.
Yeah.
Meeting Jenna in Washington State.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was gonna say you should talk about really quick the practice brewery down in North Carolina, which was like your first like actual build from ground floor up that like, really helped.
Yeah. So that was so we'll skip forward after Bellingham. Then I was finally like, it's time to try a brewery. And I was going to gather all the people that had been like, start a brewery someday. Yeah. All the people that have eventually become your friends and family investors, like the core of your investor group. But I got this opportunity. A few gentlemen down in North Carolina had already started a brewery together called Lazy Hiker, phenomenal brewery just south of Asheville, North Carolina, down in Franklin in the mountains. Beautiful place.
Which Asheville's become a
oh my god
craft beer town too.
It's killer. So I went on Pro Brewer, which is basically like the Craigslist of the brewing industry, and I saw their post. They were like, "We want to start a brewery. in this little college town, Greenville, North Carolina. ECU's there. It's right outside of Raleigh, and we're looking for someone to take it over and do the project manager. So they were the investors. I didn't get ownership, but it was like my practice brewery, like Jenna said. So it was like from dirt floor, empty building, like no electrical, to fully functional brewery with a customer base, with all that. And that was my first like kind of foray into doing from 0 to 1 and then 1 to 100, right? Because 0 to 1 is something I say a lot. 0 to 1 is infinitely harder than 1 to 100. Creating something.
I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that. That's really
like taking something that's taking something that's built and making it better is so much easier than taking nothing and making something.
Right.
So anyway, that's what I had not done. I had taken things that were already a thing, and made them better and made them more efficient, and anything I could. Obviously, like every place I worked had phenomenal teams and phenomenal brewers. But then this was the first time I went from nothing, like dirt, to, hey, it's a thing, It's called Pitt Street Brewing Company.
Pitt Street.
Yeah.
Greenville, South Carolina.
Greenville, North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Yeah, there is a Greenville, South Carolina too,
South Carolina.
and their brewing scene is amazing too.
I heard that.
Yeah, for sure. So I got to do lots of stuff with that. Obviously, a ton of things that I was like, everything from like a lot of mistakes, which is really important actually, is making mistakes and finding people that make mistakes. Because finding people that only want to talk about how awesome they are and all the things they did right is not educational for you. And they're either lying or they just haven't made mistakes yet, which usually they'll make big mistakes later. So finding people that are open and willing to talk about their mistakes is like killer.
Yeah, you learn from your mistakes more than you learn from successes.
Actually, I saw this meme I saw this meme. It's like two people, and there's a successful and unsuccessful, right? And the person that's unsuccessful is like has mistakes that are like signified as blocks that say mistakes or failures, right? And it's just like blocks on their back weighing them down, while the successful person is failures and they're building stairs and walking up those stairs.
That's a perfect meme for
I saw this yesterday. I was just like. Yeah. Wow.
Save that one, right?
I'm just like, wow, people are like, memes are great. Anyway, that's Pitt Street. So like I was fortunate enough to be mentored by these two gentlemen from the South that are just amazing human beings. And they allowed me to make mistakes while not failing the company, but make these mistakes and learn through them, which is just like, something that a lot of people that will get like that put money up for projects are like really not. They're like They want to be in there and they micromanage everything and they do not allow you to make any decisions because it's their money.
Right.
And I totally understand that. But both of them they allowed me to do that, which was an amazing, absolutely like priceless. It really is a priceless, irreplaceable educational process. And that's like a very formative time for what came to the project that we're doing now. Right. So, but backing up to Bellingham, right?
Yeah, me.
Bring Jenna into it.
Yeah. So Jenna, tell us a little bit about your background and then we'll talk about where you guys are.
Where we are now. Yeah, so I'm actually from Washington State. I grew up in Port Angeles, a little town out on the Olympic Peninsula. And I, went to college in Washington and settled in Bellingham, Washington. I went to grad school at Western, which is where I met my husband, which is Nate's brother. So they're twins.
I'm glad you clarified that because the first time I met you guys at the beginning of the project and had the same last name and business partners, I'm thinking, they're a couple.
Yeah, most people think we're married. So I'm married to Nate's twin brother, Ryan, and we were living in Bellingham, Washington, which is how Nate ended up out there working for Kolshin. And my background is in molecular biology and plant genetics, and I found myself working at like a food testing like quality lab. I started in the chemistry department, and then at some point we kind of hatched this idea to start a DNA lab, and that was what my background was in. So I got to also build something. It was a department within a company that was already successful, but I built it with a co-founder from the ground up. So I learned all about like starting something from inception, bringing clientele in, what that entails, hiring employees, and running the
managing humans,
which
is one of the hardest parts of starting a business. Yeah,
there's a lot of brain power between the two of you, a neuroscientist and a molecular biologist.
You should meet my brother.
Yeah,
he's finishing his PhD right now in bioinformatics.
Yeah, he rounds out the trifecta that is us right now. So Nate had started the project, and we can get into like how it started. I wasn't involved originally. And I was working at the lab, and I was running this department, and I actually got the opportunity to work just underneath the owner. So getting to see and manage all the interdepartmental, stuff as well. And Nate, COVID had just hit, and we were talking about like what his needs were for the business. And one of the things that I realized that I really like to do was the people managing part and like the operations, just like the organization that it takes. And he didn't want to do that part. He's like, I want to brew beer. I want to do the, business.
Production piece,
yeah, the production stuff. But not necessarily. He's good with people. He just doesn't want to manage.
It's not that like, I hate people. It's like you don't do this type of thing if you hate people,
right?
But it's just like one of those things that like I have an expertise and I know what I'm good at, and managing teams, like large teams, and those dynamics is not something that I have passion about. And I feel like doing a startup, you need a lot of passion. And so
Absolutely.
Trying to find someone that has passion for those things, like that's why, like our accounting, like I have no passion for it. Can I do it? Yeah, of course. But like, I contract that out to someone that I know that loves it, and I know they're going to do a killer job. So that's that's the same thing with like the front of house and hiring and all this stuff. And I just have to say we're jumping the gun on it, but like the hiring that Jenna has done is amazing. Our people that she has hired are like some of the most stellar people that I've met in the industry, honestly. Which says a lot. It says a lot about about her and her intuition and her methodology to hiring the right types of humans for what we want to do. Because like in the end, our front of house staff, they're the last part of quality for not only like our products, but also our company, our vibe. Like, how do we want to represent ourselves? So
yeah,
just to say that.
Thanks, Nate.
Yeah, I mean,
No, I mean, obviously hiring and staffing is the biggest challenges that most of our bank customers are dealing with right now. And you're able to pull off, and hiring into a startup scenario and get good people, that takes a special kind of person to do that. So
thank you. Yeah, we have great people. We're really happy, right? Like, yeah, we have a good situation.
The only issue is that some of them, they're leaving soon because they have the next portion of their life to go on. Like they just wanted a summer job,
right?
But we weren't gonna like not hire them because they're still awesome humans, and like any little time we get with them is like, honestly.
Yeah, I mean that's one of our goals too, is just like to hire people who want to move on to bigger and better things. Like.
Yeah, serving beer is a stepping stone, right? And we like a lot of people, like we don't want to trap people in a job. We want to help them do what they love. And if they want to just make money and have a good time and work for a great company, sweet. the time we have with them is like awesome. And then as soon as they're like, okay, we got to go, it's like, how can we help you? You know, like, do you need letters of recommendation? Like for Pitt Street, I wrote so many letters of recommendation for people that were leaving Pitt Street. Because they wanted to do other things, and most of them became head brewers now.
Awesome.
Just following their dream of, I want to do what you do, which is make beer. And it's like, do you? Sweet. Let's do it. You know?
So let's talk about the why and the when.
Yeah.
That how did Velum come together in the south side of Pittsburgh?
Yeah. So the why, I mean, I've always wanted to start a brewery. You know, I said that earlier, but why Pittsburgh? Why Southside Pittsburgh? And why when? Which when could have been chosen better. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
So Pittsburgh is you know, I was coming up and visiting Pittsburgh because I was coming up to visit my family, right? And the closest kind of big city to them is Pittsburgh. I love Franklin. I think it's a cute little town, but there's not a huge market there. And I knew from my experience that you need a good market to keep your brewery like cash positive.
Growing,
you need a minimum amount. And Pittsburgh was the closest to all of my friends and family that were going to be investors, and my actual parents, because I want them to come to the brewery that we make. Like that's the whole point. So moving back home, right?
Right.
That's why I picked Pittsburgh. Southside. So I was starting my search in late 2018. I came up and I looked at a few buildings and I looked at the market. I drank some beers at some of the breweries. I saw a brewery market that was on the growth, but not saturated yet. So great to come in while it's on the up and up, right? I saw a city that people were moving back to, especially in the next 5 to 10 years. And brewery is not a short-term investment. You know, like we have a 20-year lease that we will probably be in that building. The company will be in that building for the lifetime of the company, which the owners of the building are super happy about. By the way, they're wonderful humans too, and we'll get to that. But like they helped out through COVID. They didn't have to, and they did, and that's one of the reasons our company survived through COVID, is because of them. So anyway, back. Why did I choose Southside? So I was just looking at all these buildings, and I was like, man, I just can't find good quality buildings. It's just like all this stuff. How do I filter through this? Because I'm still working down in North Carolina, so I'm just coming up once in a while, and I need to make it like really worth my while. And so I was introduced to the owners of Ascend Climbing through a family friend. And I knew that they had spent a lot of time looking at buildings that I would look at, which is nice open space, big tall ceilings, and strong floors. That's what you need minimum for a brewery. And the first building they showed me was the floor right below them, right? Because they have their building down in Southside. It's one of the old Duquesne Brewing Company buildings, and there was another business in there at the time. And I walked through the space, and I started my dream eyes. I opened my dream eyes, and I saw it. You know, it's 35,000 square feet, so it's
pretty good size. Yeah,
it's a big building, a big chunk, right, and something to grow into. Something I say a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people get annoyed because I say it so much, is I didn't want to grow out of a building. I want to grow into a building, because growing out of a building is really expensive. Mm-hmm. Not that getting a big building and growing into it isn't expensive. It's just
on the front end.
It's different expensive, right? Selling equipment and buying new equipment and redoing buildings and redoing permits is all time and lots of money. And do it once
up front.
Do it once. That's why I have the brew house I have. That's why I chose the building I have. This is it. I don't want to do another, like, I'm not saying this is it for Velum. I'm saying this is like a great production facility. We can grow into it, and we can get up to, probably close to 100,000 barrels a year in this facility if we need to.
Right.
Organically, like, we're not going to push it because I have a lot of different opinions about pushing it out to regional and the benefits and the cost of product and your customers and all that stuff. So
So you mentioned Ascend Climbing,
Yeah,
which is
right.
Another long.
Thanks for keeping me on track.
Another
That's
long-term client of the bank. Not just the introduction to find the space, but there's really good synergies between their clientele and yours.
Right. Yeah. So I saw the space, and my dream eyes got on, and I was like, yes. Will this space work? Yes. It's got good floors. It's got high ceilings. It's got drainage. It's got a parking lot. It's got outdoor covered seating. That loading dock. It has a loading dock for deliveries. I just saw it. And then I also saw the synergy between us and Ascend, which is like, climbers and craft beer are climbers in craft beer and climbers in like a lot of different beverages, obviously kombucha and a lot of different fermented stuff. It just seems like a lot of the climbers I know, they just love things that bubble, which is what I love too. That's why we're Velum Fermentation and not Velum Brewery, because our plan is to get into everything that bubbles. Whether it's kombucha.
I was going to ask you where you came up.
Alcoholic, non-alcoholic. Like we want to grow in. Beer was what I was good at. That was our start. But we want to get into everything that bubbles, and then maybe eventually food, depending. We'll see.
Yeah.
That's just like down the road. Right?
Gotcha. Well, Jenna, I'm interested in hearing, your perception of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, coming in
as a newbie.
Yeah.
From the West Coast.
I know. Yeah, it's definitely a lot different. Obviously, like buildings wise, they're like a lot older, and the architecture is so much more interesting. The South Side in particular too is like the row housing is like so much different because Washington, everything's like new over there. But yeah, I love Pittsburgh. The food scene is really good. That's always my number one thing is like, where's all the good food? Like Nate said, the beer scene is awesome. And I moved from Bellingham, which we had like 15 breweries, and it's a town of 85,000 people. And they're continuously adding more. So I came from like good beer too.
Yeah, I think there's like 20 now.
Yeah.
Or more maybe.
And Pittsburgh has great beer. Yeah, I really like Pittsburgh. I like the borough aspect of Pittsburgh. I came from a place that doesn't have boroughs, and that I love that each one has
neighborhood feel.
Yeah, they each have their own. Like we're all part of Pittsburgh, but then we have all of our own little personalities. We actually live in Regent Square, Wilkinsburg area. We love our little neighborhood. It's like bohemian and it's comfortable, and and then I really like Southside. Southside is, and we're learning this more and more because we're meeting neighbors, but it is full of young professional families and all the way up to retired people who just love Southside. There's a lot of passion for that, the flats and the slopes. And there's so many people just doing so many cool things down there. So, I have been enjoying Pittsburgh a lot. I think that, it's artsy, it's up and coming, it's, there's lots of good people making good products, So
Well, what I find interesting, and you guys, having touched other parts of the country that have a strong beer industry, seems to be a lot of collaboration, and even though you're all competitors, a lot of interaction among the brewers. Is that what you found?
I mean, that's one of the reasons I joined the industry. I mean, you don't see that kind of collaboration in a lot of industries. So yeah, it's great. Like, especially, in Pittsburgh, like everyone hangs out. I mean, I don't get to hang out with most people, and most people don't get to, like a lot of we're all very busy right now. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's like one of those things that we see each other at events, and we're like, so great to see you. See you at the next event. Basically, because everyone is like, which is great. Obviously, that means that everyone's really busy, making great beer, and just hardly keeping up. Which is like it's something we say a lot, is a champagne problem, right? Yeah. It's a problem because we don't get to socialize with these people that are super creative and they're in our industry, but it also means there's some good happening, right? But yeah, the collaborations, like I can text any brewer and ask them like things that would usually be very like, a non-disclosure agreement type of stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, sure, text it right over, because in the end, it is collaborative rather than competitive. because we're all trying to compete, not really for our market share. We're trying to take it from other people, like Anheuser-Busch or the larger macro beers. We're trying to educate and bring everything more local, which is something that we love to do at Velum, is very, very as local as possible. But we're not competing for the same market share. And as everyone grows and becomes better brewers through collaboration, we make our industry better and we make our city better. So, and then, I don't know what the saying is, all something about tides and raising ships.
Yeah. Tides raise all boats.
Yeah, right.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like
that.
Something like that. But it's really true. It really is. That's why you see neighborhoods that have more and more breweries, and then more people go to those neighborhoods because they have breweries. More breweries in a neighborhood don't compete with each other. They bring more people. Right, Lawrenceville, Millvale. Now, Burgers and Brew is doing a brewery in Millvale, and that's going to be great for Strange Roots and Grist House, right? And they could put a couple more breweries there. And I honestly, I always hear saturated. And it's like Portland, Oregon has 100 breweries in it, right? If they're not saturated, Pittsburgh's not saturated. Okay, it just really isn't.
This wraps up part 1 of our series on Velum fermentation. Please be sure to tune in for part 2 in our next episode, where we'll talk about what Velum is today as a now open operating brewery in the south side of Pittsburgh and what the future looks like for them. For those of you that have any questions about this episode or other episodes of Inside the Vault, or have any suggestions for future topics, you can email us at insidethevault@enterprisebankpgh.com. And please be sure to check us out on all the major podcast platforms and in video format on YouTube. Thank you for watching and listening.